Hey everyone, it's Brandy and welcome back to my channel, Brandy Janae's Bookshelf. I'm actually starting this video way later than I intended to because I just spent the last few hours making pretzels and it took way longer than I thought it would. But I'm finally sitting down today and I'm getting this wrap-up filmed. So as you can tell from the title of this video, today I'm going to be going over all the books that I read in September. So like August, September was kind of a mixed bag when it came to reading. I started off the month really excited. August wasn't like my best reading month in terms of sticking to my TBR, but September I was just like, you know what, we're gonna start fresh, it's gonna be fine. I had quite a lot of books on my TBR, but I knew that everything was going to be fine. I was just like, I'm going to stick to what I have on my TBR, and then after I get through either the majority of them or all of them, then I can move on to other things. However, some personal things came up, and as you guys would have saw, I ended up not posting anything for like 3 weeks. Thankfully, during that time I was still reading. It wasn't always something from my TBR for the month, but I was still getting reading done, so that was great. And that reading was really like a stress reliever during everything that was going on. And I had gotten to the point where I was kind of tired of playing The Sims anyway, so reading kind of really stepped in. So like I said, although I didn't get as much reading done as I did in August, I feel like September I did a lot more physical reading, either like with a physical book or reading ebook copies instead of just listening to audio. So I think that's why the numbers aren't as high. Numbers really don't matter. I feel like as long as I'm reading, I'm happy. So with all of that being said, let's go over into a few of the stats that I have to talk about for the month, and then we'll move into the books that I need to talk about because I feel like this wrap up won't be particularly long. So as far as stats for September, I read a total of 15 books. And over those 15 books, I read 4,834 pages. And I did read slightly more than that if you count the book that I put down. So if we're counting that, I read 4,951 pages. So a little bit over 100 pages of the book that I ended up putting down. And for the month, I had an average rating of 3.75 stars. And then as far as the rest of the little breakdown that I had one book that I ended up putting down, or DNF'd. 7 books that I read were rereads. I read 6 print books, 4 ebooks, and 5 audiobooks. So as always, we're going to be going through all of the books in rating order, and we're going to actually start with the one book that I DNF'd, which was Dead in the Water by Haley Edwards. This book is an urban fantasy, like paranormal type of book that is following our main character. I can't remember her name at the moment, but she is working with like law enforcement to try to help catch a serial killer. I think the serial killer is going after different magical beings or something like that. Honestly, I don't remember all of the details. I started reading this book by accident. Like, I know that sounds weird, but I was listening to an audiobook. I don't remember which one, but sometimes when I'm listening to things on Audible, once the book that I finish is over, normally I would pause it or stop it and move on to the next thing. However, I was in the middle of doing something and I didn't stop it, and I'm not sure if this happens to you or if it happens all the time, but once the audiobook that I was listening to stopped, sometimes every now and then I will get like a little preview of another book to check out, something that might be available to me. But for whatever reason, it started literally playing the entire book, which has never happened to me before. Like, I didn't touch anything. I was like writing, or I was doing something, I can't remember, but it started playing the book from the beginning. And I think I got about halfway through or almost halfway through the book, and I was just like, okay, I'm ready to go to bed. So I turned it off. I was just like, I'm gonna finish it tomorrow because I had already gotten so far through it. But once I went back into it and tried to start it again, I realized, one, I could barely remember what was happening. Two, I didn't really care that much about the story. It was like mainly I really didn't care because I had no connection to the characters at all. Like, I was kind of bored. So I got as far as I did and I decided to put it down, which is where the extra 100 and something pages came from. So yeah, not much to say about this one. I didn't even mean like intentionally start reading this one. It just kind of happened by accident and I didn't have the motivation to like finish it off. That was the only DNF I had for the month, so let's move over into rereads. The first reread that I have to talk about is one that continued on from August. If you've watched my August wrap up, I mentioned that I had started a reread of the other series. This was one of the things that I had read to keep me out of a reading slump, and I read the first 2 books, or I finished the first 2 books in August, and I had started book 3, but I didn't finish it before the month was over. So of course this carried over into September, and my intention was to just finish off book 3 and then move on to something else. But at that point I was just like, okay, I'm already in it, I might as well go ahead and finish off the last 2 books. So I did and read books 3, 4, and 5 in the other series by Anne Bishop. If you don't know anything about the series, just a very general synopsis of it. It is an urban fantasy where there are paranormal creatures and humans coexisting. The paranormal creatures were in one part of the world, humans were on another part, and of course the humans expanded and they ended up going to other territories and finding out about the others. We're generations down the line. The others and the humans usually stay separated, and we're following this group of characters in the lakeside courtyard to begin with. It does eventually expand to other areas, other cities, but it mainly focuses on the lakeside courtyard after a blood prophet ends up escaping from captivity and finding her way to this lakeside courtyard, and what ends up happening or unfolding from there. So yeah, like I said, I just finished off the rest of the series because I was like, I'm already in it. So I'm not going to talk about thoughts again because these are rereads. I've read this I don't know how many times since the first time that I started the series back when I think it's been a few years now, when I was part of the Wicked Spirits book club. The next reread that I finished was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, and this is an adult contemporary romance following 30-year-old Stella Lang. She has very little dating experience, and because of her autism, she doesn't see things like kissing as being something that she would ever be interested in, because she views it as like a shark getting his teeth cleaned by pilot fish, which is obviously not very romantic at all. So after having a dinner with her parents, and her mom expresses the fact that she really wants Stella to like settle down and start a family, so she can have grandkids. Stella decides that she's not able to do that without any experience, because you know, when she's tried it in the past, it just has not been good at all. So she decides the best thing for her is to go out and hire somebody to teach her about sex, and then eventually it broadens into other things, but that's like the general basis for the start of the story. My main reasoning for this is because The Heart Principle was on my TBR, and the series is like a companion series, so you don't necessarily need to read any of the other books, but I kind of wanted to just refresh myself because I felt like it had been a couple of years since I had read this book, as well as the second book that came out in this companion series. So I just wanted to reread it. I never did get around to The Heart Principle in September, but I did reread this and I did really enjoy it again. I think when I re-rated it, it ended up getting 5 stars. So still something that I enjoy, so that was nice to know. The next set of rereads that I had were books from the Kate Daniels series. I have Magic Bites as well as Magic Burns. This is books 1 and 2 in the series. I ended up picking these up because I found out about a Kate Daniels read along, and I will leave the link to the video up above if you're curious about hearing the announcement and maybe want to participate in that. But I had heard about the readathon and I was just like, I love the series. This is another series that I typically will like binge like at least once a year. I think 2020 I might have went through it several times in a year, but anyway, I knew that it was probably coming up around the time, especially since I had just reread the Mercy Thompson series, as well as the other series, I had a feeling that I was going to want to go ahead and get into this one as well. So I figured the readathon would be the perfect opportunity for me to do this, or the read along. So that way I didn't spend an entire month reading 10 books, you know, all at once. So with this readathon or read along, I keep saying readathon, but with this read along, we're reading like all the main books plus all of the novellas. I haven't read any of the novellas before this point, so I was like, this is a perfect opportunity. I get to go back into a world that I love, as well as getting to explore new things in the world, which I haven't been able to do because I'm really iffy sometimes about reading novellas when I don't need to. So yeah, I picked these up. And if you haven't heard anything about this series at all, we are following this character named Kate Daniels. She's the main character of the series. She is living in Savannah, Georgia, but she's also like back and forth between Atlanta because she works as a mercenary in the Mercenary Guild, and being in Savannah, she doesn't always have as much work as she needs, so you know, she goes back and forth when she needs to. But in this world, there has been a shift where magic is very prevalent in the world, and when and this like goes back and forth with waves of magic and then waves of technology. For the most part, whenever magic is up, no technology works, like cars, phones are the one things that's like it kind of works sometimes, but typically like TVs, electronics, refrigerators, like lights, anything that you could think technology wise usually does not work when the magic is up. And then of course when technology is up, I think there is still the ability to use some magic, but it's obviously not as strong as when the magic is up. So we're following Kate. She has this very big secret that she doesn't want to reveal. Like, she's pretty much off to herself most of the time, and she's just working to make enough money to live. And in the first book, she ends up getting caught up with the shapeshifter pack of Atlanta, as well as the people, which are the group that controls vampires, because her guardian was killed, and she's trying to figure out who it was that did it, and that leads her to getting involved, which leads into a possible romance later in the series. It's a very involved and intricate world, which I think it's one of those things that I really love about the series, because of course the further you get along, the more that is added on. I haven't given them new ratings, but I think when I did it this time, they both got 4 stars. So I'm enjoying reading the series so far. As I mentioned, there was one more reread, but I'm just gonna go ahead and save that for when, because it's part of a series, so I'm just gonna save it when I talk about the rest of the series, because I don't want to have to like flip-flop back and forth. So moving on, I didn't have any 2-star reads this month. I know it's also, I guess, possible to have a 1-star read, which I typically don't, because if I feel like I'm at that point, I just DNF. So we're gonna go straight into my 3-star reads, which I have 2 of those this month. The first 3-star read that I have to talk about is Happy Kanoko's Killer Life, Volume 1 by Toshiya Wakabayashi. This is one of the books that I received in my July Manga Spice Cafe box, and I actually just filmed the review portion of this box. So, and I'm going to make sure that I post this first so that I can link you guys to that, because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about this. A little bit about this story. We're following this character named Kanako. She, at the start of the story, she's working this like business type of job that she really does not like. At her last job, she ended up being forced to quit by her boss. I can't remember exactly what happened, but of course after that she is like, I need a job. So she goes looking for jobs, and she gets an interview, and she accidentally has applied to become a contract killer. And it's just following her on her journey as starting at her new agency as a contract killer, and learning that she's actually pretty good at it, and seeing how this can go for her career. Just like brief thoughts. I'm not going to go into details because, like I said, I have that video that you can go watch for a little bit more like detailed thoughts of why this only got 3 stars. But I thought this was pretty fun. It was like a comedic take on a darker storyline, and for that I think it was pretty enjoyable. And as like I said, after putting it through Call Pal, I ended up getting 3 stars, so there's that one. So the next 3-star read that I have to talk about is Deal with the Devil by Kate Rocha, and this is an adult sci-fi, I believe. This takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, and we're following two perspectives, Nina and Knox. So Nina is this information broker. She basically goes and gets information from wherever she needs to, and she transports it to people in power for money, and she's doing this in order to be able to help the hopeless in the area that she's in. Knox is the captain of the Silver Devils, and they have gone AWOL from their command, and the two of them end up clashing and deciding if they are able to work together in order to complete their separate goals together. I was really excited when I first heard about it. I got this from Bookish First, but I felt like it was giving me more in the description than it gave me in the story, which always sucks when that happens. I felt like it wasn't a bad book, but it just had one of those things where not enough or not the best description to really give you an idea of what was going on. Also, I felt like this didn't focus on some of the things that I would have preferred it to focus on. I don't want to get into any of those details specifically because that could be a huge spoiler for the story. I feel like those parts are like slowly revealed, and honestly one portion of it isn't really revealed until basically the end. So I can't really tell you guys all of the the parts that I would have wished I had seen more of. I guess I can kind of briefly talk about it a little bit. So we have like in between each chapter, we have like these little snippets that are basically like scientific report on different test subjects. From my understanding that these these little snippets here are based off of different characters who we are seeing in the story or that are at least mentioned, but we don't know because they're all like by number and not by actual name. I would have liked to see more of that aspect of it. This was more like they're on a mission, they need to do this or do that, and then parts of their background are revealed, and I wanted more of the background aspects and not like, I didn't mind the mission, but I felt like it just wasn't enough to keep me fully, basically it wasn't enough of what I wanted. Like I said, this was interesting. I think I am interested enough in reading the sequel because I think this might be a trilogy, so I would like to continue on because it kind of left off on a cliffhanger. This one got 3 stars. I would like to read book 2. I'm definitely gonna see if the library has like an audiobook for it, and go from there, but this is okay. All right, so we're gonna move right over into my 4-star reads, and now that I'm looking at my little thing, I just remembered that I didn't have any 5 stars this month. So this is gonna be the last section, and I don't have much to talk about. I feel like I said, this is gonna be super short because a lot of this stuff I'm just lumping together, and I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of details. So the first book in that section that I have to talk about is Wolf Song by TJ Klune, which is another urban fantasy. In the story, we're following this character named Ox as he goes through different stages of his life, and in following him as he's growing up, we also see this family come into the picture. They live in this house down the road. They come in and they kind of like dramatically change his life and the outcome of where he's going. Once again, I feel like super vague, but honestly the description is also super vague. Like, it's just a breakdown of different years of his life. I was really excited about this one because I know this has like a lot of hype, but it definitely was not what I was expecting it to be. It's gonna be weird because I feel like I'm about to have a lot of complaints about this book, but somehow I put all my numbers in a call pile and it still got 4 stars. I might have been a little over generous, so maybe I might have to go back and revisit, but there was something about the writing style that wasn't sitting well with me. I felt like I would be reading forever, and then I look and I read like 10 pages, and it was crazy because like when you have pages like this where there's like not a whole lot of text on the page, it's just like, why is this taking me forever? I don't know. That was the first problem that I had with this. Touching very quickly on the romance, I thought it was weird how like we were introduced to the romance like so early on in one of the characters' lives, and how like it was seen as a romantic thing so early on, and everyone had kind of just accepted it. And like it was addressed in the book, but at the same time I still felt very uncomfortable with the way things were handled with that. So that's another thing. I'm trying to remember all of the little details because I feel like I had a lot of things that I was just like, but why? Like, why? I don't know. It was something about this. Like, I didn't dislike it. Obviously, it got a decent rating. But if I was to like do based off of my personal enjoyment, this probably would have ended up with 3 stars. This isn't the type of book that I would normally gravitate towards. Like, if I had just read a little bit of this, I would have immediately put it down if it wasn't something that I was just like, I spent money on this physical copy. You're gonna finish this book. So I don't know. I don't know how to explain this once again because I don't want to like break down the entire storyline. There were moments, especially like later in the book, like towards the end, I got very invested in what was going on and like the characters and their journeys and things like that. But there was so much more that I was just like, okay, can we get to the point? Like, it's taking forever. I'm ready to get past this. I want to know like the meat of the story, because I just felt like I was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And you know, the last 100 pages, maybe last 150, is where everything that I cared about happened. So I could be just being super picky, but this wasn't my favorite. Like I said, if I was going based off of personal enjoyment, this probably would have got 3, but putting it through Compile, I got 4. I'm still shocked by that. And I'm just gonna leave this here because I don't want to feel like I'm tearing this book apart, but there's that. The next 4-star read that I have to talk about is Shifting Shadows by Patricia Briggs. And this is actually a short story collection that takes place in the Mercy Thompson world. I believe that the majority of the stories that are in this collection are actually not following Mercy or any of the immediate characters that she was surrounded by. This one was kind of a mixed bag. I think, once again, if I was going just on personal enjoyment, I would have given this like 3 stars. But I think what I did with this one was like give each story a rating and average it out. I'm pretty sure that's what I did, and that average rating ended up coming out to 4. So that's why this one ended up getting 4 stars. I'm not gonna go through each individual story because if you've read the series, you probably won't care, because like I said, most of these stories aren't following Mercy. I think that was probably my biggest complaint, because going into this, I thought this was a short story collection, just like adding on to the characters that we know and love, but it wasn't really. So that was kind of a drawback. If you already have an attachment to specific characters and you're looking for more from them, then you're not really going to care about this, which was the case for me. But like I said, ended up getting 4 stars. Okay, moving on to the second to last thing that I need to talk about, and this is the comic book series that I read, which is Monstrous by Marjorie Liu. And I'm going to be just kind of lumping together volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3. Volume 1 was actually a reread. Looking back on Goodreads, I read it back in 2016, which is wild. I think that might have been my first full year on BookTube. This one is a steampunk comic book series that is following a character named Maika Halfwolf, who is trying to survive after this huge war. And something happened in her childhood that she doesn't remember that caused her to be bound to this very powerful being, and because of that she now has like its abilities, or is able to work through her. I don't know how to explain it, but she's bound to this very powerful being, and now she's being hunted so that they can take whatever power from her before she's able to fulfill the prophecy of starting another war, I believe, or deciding which way a war is gonna go. Kind of confusing, but I feel like reading the first 3 volumes that is still not a very clear picture on where the series is going. Sorry to be super vague once again, but I feel like this is another one that you kind of just have to read it and go along with the story. Like, there is a description available, but I feel like there's just so much that you can't get from a description, especially when it comes to comic book series. One thing that I will say about this series is that it's a bit disjointed, especially in the very beginning, but I feel like it's getting better the further along we get in the series. I know for sure in that first volume it was so many time jumps and like going between characters. There wasn't really either a clear explanation or a clear idea of why that was necessarily done, but I feel like the further along we go, because volume 2 got a little better, volume 3 was definitely way better than the previous two. Like, we still have some flashbacks here and there, but there aren't as many, and when they happen they seem to make a little bit more sense in the moment than they had in previous. Because it's just like volume 1 specifically, you would flip, you would read a chapter, there's this big fight scene, and then you would flip to chapter 2, fight scene was still going on at the end of that first chapter, or at the end of a chapter, and then you flip and then you're like in our main character's past, like way back in the past, and there was just like no real reason why we were there, because it doesn't add or didn't add anything that would have either supported the previous chapter or the next one. So it was kind of all over the place, but I feel like I said, as we continue, it's getting a little bit better. There's so much that has happened in the 3 volumes that I've read, and I think this one is really good, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with the other 3 that are currently out. Volume 1 I didn't rate again, but I think when I put it in the system it ended up getting 4. Volume 2 got 4 stars, and volume 3 got 4 stars. And the final book that I have to talk about that I finished in September is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is a YA fantasy. So this one is following this character named Karu, who is an art student that is currently studying in Prague, and she draws these really fanciful comics of these magical creatures and this magical land, and like this thing or person collecting teeth for a specific reason and being able to make wishes, all of these crazy things. And it's something that she's well known for in her, you know, studies because of, and she's just like, they don't realize that this is actually true. So she's part of this like secret world where magic exists, and there, you know, she knows about these magical beings, and she's always running these errands. However, she feels like although she knows her name and things like that, she doesn't really know who she is. Eventually she gets separated from her guardian, who basically raised her, and she has no access to him and the like separate magical world that she would go visit him and the people that he lived with in. And she's trying to basically find her way any way possible to get back to them. I had a feeling that I would enjoy this, but I wasn't expecting to enjoy this as much as I did, especially considering how old this book is. Like, at this point it's like 10 years old. This definitely had those YA tropes that are very well known in the YA genre or age category, I guess, but I did still really enjoy this. I feel like maybe if I had read it, you know, when it had first came out, I would have loved it way more than I enjoyed it, but overall I thought it was still really well done, and it does kind of hold up. I guess if you like this type of story, it holds up, and it ended up getting 4 stars, and I'm definitely looking forward to continuing on with the rest of the series. So yeah, I know this video was kind of quick, and I probably didn't do the best to explain all of my thoughts on everything, but we're just gonna have to go with it for this month. Let me know down in the comments what are some of the things that you read in September, or if you don't want to do multiples, let me know what your favorite thing that you read in September was. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to see more from me, make sure you subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next one. Bye.